Welcome. Today's presentation is going to be on accessing our own opportunities. This is being brought to you by WeCo Accessibility Services. And we want to thank WeCo. We want to thank WeCo for sponsoring today's discussion. A few ground rules to start with. Please keep your microphone muted unless speaking to create the best experience for everyone. Feel free to share questions via the chat function at any time or save general questions for the end. We'll be asking for questions throughout, and that is a great time to speak up and ask your question or share it via chat. Captioning is being provided today by Caption Access and is available by selecting the closed caption option at the bottom of the screen. There's also a link provided if you would like to view it on a web browser. That link is available in the presentation that you're seeing on your screen. It is also being posted in the chat box. The meeting is being recorded and will be made available following the event. If you have any additional questions or need any assistance, please send an email to admin@theweco.com. This will be a great place for follow-up or to continue the conversation. A little about WeCo. WeCo is comprised of digital technologists who live with one or more disabilities. Our mission is to foster accessibility awareness and independence for all people, regardless of their disability. We provide services by offering trainings as well as auditing, consulting, usability testing, and remediation of websites, mobile apps, and digital documents. Because all of the people in technical roles at WeCo live with one or more disability, our work has special significance to us. We live with the results of our work every day. We have been honored for the second year in a row as a National Organization on Disability leading disability employer, staffed almost 100% by professionals living with disabilities. From our entry-level staff to executive management, we live and breathe disability employment. National Disability Employment Awareness Month is held every October and focuses on helping educate the public and organizations about disability employment. WeCo uses this time to honor our own staff with the amazing things they've done throughout the year and help to celebrate and showcase what people living with disabilities can bring to the workplace. From unique points of view to their unmatchable drive and motivation, people living with disabilities offer amazing contributions to the production of products and services to the world. I'm Andy Emerson, and I am the event coordinator with WeCo. I'd like to introduce some of the other colleagues that will be joining us today on the panel. First up, we have Sue-Ann Rodriguez, the Director of Accessibility Services. Sue-Ann, would you like to say hello?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Next up, a few members of the WeCo Certified Test Team. First, we have Linda Little, CTC Coordinator. Linda, you want to say hi?
Yes, thanks, Andy, and thanks everyone for coming.
Next up, we have Paul Day, Senior in CTC. Would you like to say hello, Paul?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this early evening.
And next up, we have Troy, Lead CTC. Troy, would you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody, and thanks for coming.
And from the WeCo Operations team, Laura Ander, Operations Assistant. Laura, you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm very excited to speak today, and very excited to hear a bunch of questions. Thank you, Andy.
And panel moderator for today's discussion is Melanie Zuski. She's a client relations specialist. Melanie, would you like to take it away from here?
I would love to. Yeah, I'd like to add my welcome to everyone. I'm Melanie, and I'm glad to be here. And I'm excited to have all of you with us. Excuse me. Since this year's theme for National Disability Employment Awareness Month is accessing an opportunity, we hope to give you some insight so you can increase your access to employment opportunities. So let's get started with some success stories. Troy, will you start us off with talking just a little bit about how you found WeCo?
Yes, I found WeCo basically through word of mouth. I was at a place called Vision Loss Resources 3 years ago for some event, and someone's PCA happened to mention to the group of us that was there that WeCo was looking for testers, and given the fact that if the job search wasn't going well at the time, I decided, well, why not? Let's take a shot and become a certified test consultant, and here I am.
Thanks, Troy. Laura, how about you? How did you get to WeCo?
Thank you so much, Melanie, for asking. How I got to WeCo is actually in my former job. There was a point where I was coming to a point where I really was thinking, okay, I can do more than what I'm doing right now in my former job. And so I was actually looking for a job where I am today at WeCo in the position I am. So in other words, WeCo Accessibility Services, like it was my dream job to be able to work at WeCo. It was my dream to work there, and I'm very glad I found it. Actually, my job coach sent me a position description on, I believe it was on Indeed, the job search website engine, job search engine, I guess you could say. And it was really up to me, you know, to actually go for it. And I said to my job coach, okay, thank you. I love what I see. I'm going to do everything I can to make them notice me and bug them in a nice, polite way, just to let WeCo know that I'm interested in working for them. So I persevered. In reaching WeCo, I called them, I emailed different staff. I did whatever I could, and I spoke up, and I'm so happy that I'm here today, and I still am. Yeah, so thank you, Melanie.
Thanks, Laura. How about you, Linda?
Thanks, Melanie. Yeah, how I came to WeCo was I was working at a law firm in Chicago, and I started working with a friend of mine, and he was a WeCo advisory board member, Liv Gomes, and I found WeCo through there, so through social networking.
Awesome, awesome. Paul, what's your story on getting to WeCo?
My story was a lot like Laura's story. I was at the time working as an assistive technology specialist, and being a person with a disability and training clients using the website, you would run across all the different barriers that we would face. So I always had an interest in accessibility and accessibility testing, and I had the opportunity when I first moved up to where I currently live now, transitioning from a job that I had in Pennsylvania to get a contracting job working on the governor of New York's website, David Petraeus, who's a vision impaired governor of New York at the time, to test his website for accessibility, and that sort of piqued my interest. So working at that company that I was at as a assistive technology specialist, I didn't really get to use those type of skills, but because I had that sort of drive to learn, I went out and sort of started taking courses on web accessibility testing and sort of trying to get more experience and more skills, because that was my ultimate goal, was to find a job where I could use those skills. So I started getting certifications in different areas around web accessibility testing. And talking with a friend of mine, he told me about WeCo, and that I should reach out to them. But at that time, I knew I didn't have that much experience yet. I still wanted to do some more self-skill building and attending more courses. And after a year or so later, after I felt that I was fully qualified and knew that I could talk the lingo, also explain the problems that I was having on the website, you know, I know exactly why something wasn't working for me, and could communicate that in a professional way, and had some certifications under my belt. I reached out to WeCo and applied to be a certified test consultant. And so that's how I ended up here at WeCo, and it's been a pivotal decision and a pivotal role in my current position, my full-time position now, as a accessibility tester for Verizon Wireless. And WeCo was a big part in helping me have the foundation and the training to be able to, be a part of a major corporations. So I owe a lot to WeCo.
Wow, that's terrific. That's terrific. Sue Ann, how did you get to be at WeCo?
Yes, I was in graduate school, just about to be through with my degree in technical communication and a fellow student that I went to college with when I was getting my bachelor's degree. She was working for a company, and she asked me if I wanted to do a usability test for the company that she worked for. And so I agreed. And so after the usability test that I did for her and her company, she's like, Sue Ann, there's a lot of companies now that would be interested in having an individual like you. And I will disclose that I am blind. So she was like, having somebody blind and do these kind of tasks, a lot of companies are going to be, would be interested in you. So I actually did a Google search for like accessibility, usability companies in Minnesota, and that's how I came to be at WeCo.
Well, thank you. So it sounds like word of mouth and talking with friends, coworkers, also using a job coach, and then doing some research and seeing what's out there are some ways that everybody has found their way to our company. What is your biggest fear about seeking employment, or what was that biggest fear, and how did you overcome this? Laura, will you start answering that one?
Yes, I will. Thanks, Melanie. My biggest fear in seeking employment was, I'm going to come right out and disclose it, which I'm comfortable in doing. I do have a mild condition of cerebral palsy, and I was just scared that companies would take one look at me and be like, nope, we don't want you because you have cerebral palsy. Little did I know that is not true at all. But that was my big gut feeling, like, oh, I want this job I want this job at the time at a restaurant I was seeking employment at, and I'm like, they're not gonna hire me because I can't, or I hate the word, I hate the words I can't. I struggle with like lifting heavy dishes or like it would be hard for me to learn how to be cashier and handle a cash register. So yeah, they're not gonna want me at all. That was like that's an example. But yeah, I mean, but I just put my best put my I'm sorry, my best foot forward, and I was like, you know what, this is who I am. Take it or leave it. So thank you, Melanie.
That's great. Thanks, Laura. And Paul, what was your greatest fear?
I sort of had two fears. My first fear was how to get to the job. Being blind myself, you would see a lot of jobs and they just would not be close, especially living in New Jersey. Depending on what part of New Jersey you're in, you almost need a car unless you're in one of the major cities. And a lot of the jobs that I was seeking were out in the suburbs. And a lot of the job descriptions had in the qualifications must have a license, even though that they were jobs for, working with people with disabilities. So immediately I was like, well, you're not hiring a person with a disability because you're saying a license is required, and that automatically eliminates, a vast majority of us, Um, so getting there, and also planning on getting there, not just in the fair weather in the summertime, but how would I get there during the winter time when it's snow on the ground and it's cold, and how many trains will I have to take? I can learn mobility and get someone to take me there. I live in the north part of Jersey, and I taken a job that was in Trenton, which is in the center part of our state. So I used to have to travel an hour and a half by train and bus just to get to work. But and my last or second fear was sort of mirroring Laura's fear. When I walk into this office or walk into this interview, holding my white cane, would someone's preconceived notion of what I can do precede my interview and overshadow my qualifications and my passion for that job, which I had happened to me straight out of college. I was applying for a job, and I had a person that was interviewing me come out and ask me, say to me that he couldn't imagine how he would do the job if he was blind. So how could I do it? So that has really stuck with me. I wish I'd known a little bit more back then about the, about the steps I could have taken to, um, come back at that employer. But it did teach me a lesson, and we have overcome that is by putting that aside, because I have no control over what people think necessarily. But I could try to change their mind by coming in and projecting confidence and being qualified for the job when I walk in the door. So it makes them a little bit harder for them to actually prejudice against me, because I will be that best qualified applicant for that job, and that employer is going to see that.
All right, thank you. Troy, do you have anything to add?
Alrighty. For me, the biggest fear I think was whatever job that I sent the application for would work out for me. If I ultimately got the job, and I can kind of touch on the same things that Paul talks about. I'm blind, but I also hear with a cochlear implant, so my hearing loss can be a barrier to employment. But I was, when I was looking for work, some of the jobs I was looking at was office work, and a lot of it was you had to answer phones and stuff like that, and but the biggest issue for me was being was would the job work out for me or not? And obviously, if they didn't call me for a job hire, or us saying that if they want to hire me, it obviously was not going to be the best fit for me. But thing is, you have to send applications, and go through the interview process and see how it works out. You know, you could decide, you know, after you've interviewed that maybe, oh, maybe it's not the best fit or whatever the case might be. But my best advice is if there's a job you want to send an application and resume to, just send me an application and resume and go through the process and see how it works out.
Thanks. So from what you guys have said, that biggest fear is really how to get over others' preconceived ideas of having a disability and your abilities despite that. And the way that you overcame was just that confidence. This is me, and I'll focus on my strengths and we'll see if it's a good fit. So those are some good things to remember. What steps have you guys taken to make yourself work ready, whether that's formal training or networking strategies? Paul, will you start us out with this one?
Sure. Some of the steps I have taken to make myself work ready is no matter what I've done, I've always been sort of looking for the way I can bring more to whatever company or organization I was working with. So a lot of education. When I was with my first job as a youth leader and an advocacy program manager, I always studied, you know, ways that I could provide more counseling and more opportunities to my, you know, to the staff below me. When I was an assistive technology specialist, I did more training, make sure I kept up on the current technologies, and then also doing the web certification stuff, so I can bring an asset to the company that wasn't there before. So it's always about continuing your education, continuing your training in whatever field you are in, taking advantage of anything that your company might offer you to sort of gain more experience and to gain more skill set. And that's the way that you move up in companies, and also other opportunities might come along. And I also made sure that my resume was updated at least once or you know, once a year or so, keeping my skills and everything updated. And as from when I started working, social media wasn't really up there yet, but when it really became a thing, you know, on LinkedIn, I made sure that it was out there, and that has opened up opportunities for me as well, and also Indeed, places like that. So really getting
Okay,
your resume out there.
thanks. Troy, what have you done to make yourself work ready?
For me, you know, I got the college degree but I think, you know, I have had a lifelong dream of being a radio broadcaster, and so some of the things I've done with that, this was a few years ago. I was able to job shadow the Minnesota Twins radio broadcast team, and I've also so here's the thing about LinkedIn. If you can look at, you know, people you know and see, go through who, you know, their network and see if there's people in the industry that you're interested in. So I did a little bit of that. But I also found on when I was looking up information on this one blind guy who worked minor league baseball games with his college buddy, I found a news article on this guy who's blind. He was at the time he was in grad school, and he had done some color commentary for his for the college that he had graduated from, their sports broadcasts like women's basketball and stuff like that. And I actually was able to reach out through LinkedIn, and I was able to talk to him about, you know, what, you know, how he got there and stuff like that. And, you know, the thing is, guys, is I think, you know, look for somebody, if, you know, if there's an industry that you're interested in, look for somebody with your disability who might already be in that industry, and see if you can contact him, and, you know, perhaps, you know, talking to them, you can find out, you know, how far do you want to go with, you know, your passions. that you guys share, how far you want to take your dream.
Thanks. That's really, really good advice. Laura, do you have some points to add?
Yes, thank you, Melanie. I do have some points I want to add for me. Like I said, in my previous, in our previous, well, I mean, when Melanie asked previous questions, my answers were that I talked about working with job coach, and I worked with a job coach since 2010. Not the same job coach. There's been several job coaches who have left, but I currently am still with a job coach. And my previous job coaches have really taught me, like this is what you got to do for going into an interview. But then also, like, they were who I went to for advice, or if I had any questions, or I remember practicing doing a mock interview with one of my job coaches. So that was really helpful. But then on the personal side, as I'm working now in an office environment, that's always been my dream, but I didn't know at the time it was going to come true, because I was like, oh, no, I'm not good enough to work in a corporate setting, an office position. But my sisters really have coached me and been my role models who I have looked up to, and they really set the stage for me of how I should present myself in well, the world, but I mean a work setting, an office setting. My story has been different than their stories, but they've set an example for me to look up to, and they have taught me, oh, this is what you should wear, this is, how you should get yourself ready, be confident, Laura. And also my parents too, can't forget about my parents, but I would say my sisters have played a big part in coaching me of how I should present myself. So yeah.
Wow, so there's a lot of different things that you guys have each taken on. Certainly the formal training of college and certification programs and things, but then Googling and making some networking with some people who have maybe gone on the path that you want, that they've gone on that before, having some role models and a support system, whether that's job coaching or your family. So some different ways to really get yourself ready to work and support yourself as you're doing this. So now let's go from a different perspective. From the hiring manager, we have two with us today. What are 2 or 3 things that will stand out to you about an applicant? Things that make you remember different applicants. Linda, will you start us on this question?
Yes, thank you. The 2 to 3 things that stand out for me to an applicant is someone who is work ready. This means someone that's taking the time to prepare for the interview, read the position descriptions, maybe done a little bit more research about who we are. And then I also look for, interest in the industry as well, because if you don't really have an interest in what WeCo does, that really is not going to fit for us.
Mm-hmm. Sue Ann, do you have some things that really make a candidate stand out for you?
Yes, I just wanted to add one more point to Linda, that she pretty much covered them all, but I think it's really important that What impresses me is when a candidate, you can tell that they have prepared for the interview in the fact that they have practiced those basic quote unquote interview questions that you know that your typical employer are going to be asking you, and there's a lot of resources about that online. For example, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, why do you think we should hire you, etc.
Great, thank you, thank you. And do either of you have any deal breakers that really turn you off for an applicant? Sue-Ann, you want to start?
Yes. I think a deal breaker for me, or one of them, is if you can tell that the candidate that you are interviewing isn't prepared. One example would be has not read the job description, and when you ask them, certain questions, they can't. You just tell that they have not read the job description. I think it's really important, if you're going to be applying for a job, that you have read over the job description and know what the responsibilities are, the job experience, so that way when responding to their questions, you can apply them to what your experience has been in other jobs or in your education.
Okay, thanks. Linda, do you have anything to add?
I just have one more thing I'd like to add to what Sue-Ann said, because she pretty much covered it. But another deal breaker for me is if you are not prepared or not on time without any type of communication, like to me via email saying you're having technical difficulties or anything like that. And that's a big deal breaker for me. So make sure you're on time for your interviews.
So it seems like it's the main, the same topics, either put a candidate in the definite plus column or the definite minus column of being interested in the industry, being work ready, having read the position description, and then being timely and staying in contact with your interviewers if you are having difficulty. So thanks. Now back to our other employees. What ways have you taken your disability and shown it to be an asset to a company or in an interview? Troy, would you start?
Sure. So when I interviewed for WeCo, this is what I said. I said that the doing this type of website testing is sort of like customer service, in the fact that you are providing feedback based upon how so for me, I'm blind. So based upon how my experiences are with how I interacted with their, with the website that's being tested. And so in that sense, my disability is an asset in the fact that I'm taking my experiences and relaying in my feedback how the website's working out for me, and bad feedback hopefully is used to improve that website for other people who are blind or who may have a hearing loss, that the improvements would be utilized to help those people as far as being able to use their the website.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Laura, how about you? Have you, how would you take your disability and turn it around and show it as an asset to a company?
Thank you, Melanie, for asking that again. This is a really good question. I would say that how in my previous jobs and at WeCo today, how my cerebral palsy is a great asset to my position is, well, for one thing, I don't know, Melanie, if this answers your question fully, but I'm a huge people person and I love talking to people. I have really good communication skills. My writing, physical writing, I shake when I physically write and I'm a slow typer. My fingers don't work well typing. But I would just say, you know, that I just present myself really well and I speak up to what I need or what works for me and what doesn't. And yeah, that's I would say a great asset for what I bring to the table in WeCo. Yeah, working for WeCo.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yes.
And Paul, how about you? How have you taken a disability, your disability, and made it shine?
I'm going to relate to how I used it to get the current position that I have now at Verizon. Because I knew going into WeCo, it was a company for people with disabilities. So I was going to be there with a lot of good people that could relate to me. But with the job that I'm currently at now, I had the fortunate to be in a position where I was being sought by them. And again, I can't say it enough. It was because my resume was out there on LinkedIn where the recruiter found it, and in Indeed, and WeCo was on that resume. And anybody can search up WeCo and see exactly what we do here. So I was being recruited. So when I went into that room, I always look to see if we're working around disability, where are the other disabled people in this room or on this team? And at that time, they didn't disclose that they had any other people with disabilities. So I needed to make sure that they knew that, they needed to hire me, because if they didn't have anybody else there, they needed to know if they're doing accessibility, they needed to have a voice at the table that actually had um, a disability and someone who actually has worked with clients around the state that had disabilities and could bring an insight to that company and to the team of what our community's needs are. So, I sort of use that as to say that, I can benefit your team by bringing that insight, and from the work that I have already been doing around web accessibility testing, I can already hit the ground running and not having to do any training. And one of the statements that they made in that meeting is that they wanted me to train them. So that's how I managed to change or use my disability as an asset, or show them that it could be an asset.
That you had a unique skill. Yes, great. How have you approached needing accommodations with an employer? Laura?
Thanks, Melanie, for asking. How I have approached in needing accommodations. So yes, I do work with a job coach who helps me in any way that she can, or I have worked with previous job coaches. But I always thought in my head, I I always thought like I was supposed to let my employer know that I had a disability. Out of all my jobs, I've always disclosed my disability. So I didn't have a problem, or I haven't had a problem disclosing it. Yes, I was obviously nervous in disclosing it, because again, that's where that fear comes in. Oh, they're not going to hire me. But once I got it out there, I felt relieved. And then I would say, I would need accommodations in this area or For example, if I couldn't lift something, if I couldn't write or take notes. But I was, like I said, when I got over that fear of disclosing my disability, it was much easier to ask for accommodations in the past
Okay.
and now in the present. So thanks, Melanie.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Paul, have you, how did you experience talking about needing accommodations when in an interview?
Right. So I'm going to go back because the last two companies now, it's, you know, they're sort of more educated now in a sense in certain industries. But when I first started job searching and working in jobs back in the early 2000s, you know, the question would ultimately come up of, you know, what would you need to be able to do this job? And I would tell them, well, all I need is a screen reader. You know, this is the technology. This is what it allows me to do. And I would always make sure that I came to an interview prepared. So I would come with whatever device that I needed to take notes because I had questions for the employer that I wanted to ask. And I wanted to make sure that I could take notes down from the interview, what the employer was also telling me. And you know, because there's your head is spinning, so you want to make sure that you have a way to document what actually happened in that interview. And I also think that it shows the employer that you're serious and that you're taking the job serious and you really want the job. So they would see that I had some type of technology there, and that would sort of also break the ice. They would be curious. Oh, what is that? And oh yeah, this is my talking, you know, whatever, or my laptop, it has JAWS on it. JAWS is the software. You know, this will allow me to do this. It opens up my computer for me, and they're just blown away and like, oh, okay, so this person can do this job. I just get that software for them, or I'll get this for them, and they can do it. And, you know, depending on who you're going to work with, if it's a small business or a corporation, you know, the thought of how much is it going to cost to do it might come up. But then you just let them see that that's an investment. And if they put that investment in you, you're going to bring back 20 times the value. So I sort of sum it up, bring my technology with me, break the ice that way, and just have it come out in the interview part where I get the actual employer questions.
Wow, those are some great points to remember. Thank you. Troy, do you have anything to add?
I guess for me, the way I went about it, if it was like a phone interview, I never really brought up my disability. Because usually the next step would be an in-person interview, and I could bring up Vin because obviously, you know, when I show up for the in-person interview with whoever is working with as far as the job search, you know, be able to see me with my white cane and stuff like that, and so at some point towards the end, I would explain to them, you know, that in order for me to do this job, I would need, you know, whatever, like, you know, if it's a screen reader software or whatever the case may be. So that's how I did it. Usually during phone interviews, I didn't bring it up, but it was an in-person interview, then I would bring it up.
Okay, okay, that's good to remember too. Linda and Sue Ann, is there anything that you would like to hear from an interviewee, a candidate, about accommodations? How would you like to have someone bring up their needs? Linda, will you start for us?
Sure. Thanks, Melanie. Yeah, so I'm sorry. I would have to say, sorry, can we come back to me, Melanie?
Sure. Sue Ann, does anything come to mind for you how you would like someone to bring up needing accommodations?
Yes, I think that Paul had explained when he was responding to this question. I think he said it past when an employer will ask you, you know, what would you need to do this job or something to that effect. I would also say that my experience has been when I was in doing different job interviews, when a employer would ask me questions about, you know, well, do you have experience with this? And, you know, how would you go about that? And then I would incorporate, you know, well, you know, I use a screen reader. So when I worked here, I did this, or when I was in college, I did it this way. So that's another way of incorporating your needs if the employer doesn't ask you a direct question about that.
So bringing it up within the context of other questions, but to put it out there and not make a big deal of it, but to show your experience with those different accommodations.
Yes.
Okay. Linda, did you have another point, or?
I would have to agree with Sue Ann. And then I would also like to say that, you know, don't be afraid to ask for it. You know, I think as an employer, I'm very much eager to see someone ask for an accommodation, you know, because if it's easy to do, and whether it's easy or not, but it means like they're actually willing to work with you and do things. So I think don't be afraid to ask.
So being proactive.
Yes.
Being proactive, and so that you can do the best job that you can. Thank you. Thank you. Now, how we have a few minutes left. How have you handled a question that really stumped you because you had no experience or you weren't expecting it? Laura, has that ever happened to you?
Thanks, Melanie. Yes. I want to say, instead of the word unfortunately, I want to say fortunately, that has happened to me more than once. And the reason why I say fortunately is because the more I had to respond to a question like that, the more and more I got comfortable with my answer, and I wanted to add on to my answer. When I've experienced that question, I would be honest and say, you know what? I've never dealt with that situation before, but in my view, here's what I would do if that has ever happened to me. If the question was pertaining to a emergency on the job, or handling a rude customer, or yeah. So basically I would just be like, hey, here's how I would handle it. And if that ever happens to me, I'd be more than happy to take care of it this way. So yeah.
Okay.
Melanie.
All right. Paul?
Yes, I would have to agree with Laura when she said, be honest with the employer. If you don't know it, you don't know it, right? And if you're going to sit there and try to make up something, they're going to see it, and they're going to know that you don't know. But always let them know that, you know, you're willing to learn it. I was in an interview to be a it was a person that does evaluations for people with assistive technologies and get them the right equipment. And I got thrown a question about magnification and the proper magnification. Well, I'm blind, right? I had friends that are visually impaired, but I never cared about what their magnification was. So I had no idea what the proper, or, you know, if the person can't see a certain magnification, it's the right time to recommend Zoom text, right? So I'm like, honestly, I don't really know, but I would, you know, I'm sure by, you know, if I get hired, you know, there'll be training, or, you know, I can learn that, you know, and then, and I also said, I'm also sure that for different clients, I'm sure there'll be some minor swings, you know, within the types of magnification, but, you know, I would definitely go ahead and make sure that I know that, you know, that information if you choose me for this position. And I think being honest and being willing to learn
Okay.
are the two parts.
Thank you. Thank you. Troy, has it ever happened to you, and how would you handle it?
Yes, for me, this is what I would do. Well, it would also depend on the question too, but sometimes, depending on the question, I may say, I might pause and I might say, hold on, let me think about this for a second. You can do that, if it's something you're not totally sure about. And also, yeah, if it's if they ask you, how are you familiar with this piece of software or whatever the case might be, I would say, well, I could say why I've experienced using it in my own personal life, or I can learn about it on the job if I have to. I may, just emphasize that you're willing to learn. So, just be honest about it. That's all I can say. Be honest. Say, hey, I don't know much about it, but I can learn, or I have used this before in my own personal life, but I may not know everything. Just be honest about it.
Great, great, thanks. So being honest and letting the employer know for sure that you're ready to learn and will learn whatever you need to. So let's take the rest of our time. Andy, do we have any questions from our participants, our attendees today?
Yes, Melanie. We actually have a couple great questions that have come in. The first question we have is from Sam. Sam asks, do you find that a 4-year degree is a must for finding a corporate job?
Can I take that one, Melanie?
That would be great, Linda.
Sure. I can tell you, you do not have to have a 4-year degree to have a corporate job. I only have my associates, and I worked in corporate in 2 different works environments, and I don't think it's necessary at all. Great add-on, but not necessary.
Great, thank you.
Can I respond to all that as well, real quick? Melanie, sorry. And I would agree with Linda, but I would also say that, read the job description, because it might be, depending what kind of job you're looking for, just ensure that you read that job description. But Linda is right, though.
Thanks. Yeah, back to that, reading the job description and being prepared. Thanks. Andy, you said there were some more?
Yes, we also got a question from Lance. Lance asks, what kinds of web accessibility courses and certificates are most helpful for entry-level positions, the top 3 to 5 skills or tools? And who are the best providers of these courses and certificates? Paul, I think you spoke to this. Would you like to answer this question?
Sure, I'll take a crack at it. I utilized Deck University, their course, and I continue to utilize that. We utilize that at Verizon. Having that on my resume went a long way of helping me out with getting that position, because it was a company that they're familiar with and their standards that they're familiar with. I will say, take a basic web accessibility course. You have to know the language, what it means, what the terminology is, and then start digging down from there. You don't need to know HTML per se, but you should get a familiarity with it, especially if you want to move up. You're going to need to know it eventually, because you're going to have to speak with developers depending on whether, what kind of position you get. You're going to have to know how to tell them what is wrong. So you're going to need to know HTML, and you're going to have to get familiar with the automated testing tools that are out there, and which ones are accessible and how to use them, and using the inspect panel in the different web browsers. And you're going to also have to know the WCAG guidelines, because we refer back to them every single day. Everything we do branches off of those guidelines. So you don't have to memorize them, but you need to have a familiarity with them and know where to go to find what you need to find. So I guess that's the best place to start. I will say is Deck University, and it's spelled with a Q. So you can type that in there, and they should pop up anything around web accessibility courses.
Okay, Andy,
Is there
are there
anyone
any?
else that would like to? Is there anyone else that would like to speak to those courses? Anything else that anyone has taken that they found helpful?
So I'll chime in here. So Paul is right. Knowing the WCAG guidelines, which stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, like Paul said, you know, they use them every day at his job where he's employed, and we use them here at WeCo as well. A lot of standards and internationally, legally, they apply these WCAG guidelines. So it's really good to get, like Paul said, familiar with them. There's also from W3C. There's also tutorials on their website if you want to start to get to understand code. There's tutorials on HTML, the programming language, also CSS. That's one that you should be familiar with as well.
I would definitely chime in again and say, if you're going to apply for a job, read the job description. And if they say that you need to know HTML, you need to know ARIA and CSS, and you don't know it, don't apply, because that's all you're going to speak with developers. I mean, that's their language, and if you don't know it, you're not going to be able to communicate with them, and you can't really sort of tiptoe the tulips, you know, when it comes to that. So you can't fake it. You either know it or you don't know it.
And I was also chime off of you, Paul, in that when it comes to accessibility, it's a good thing to know not only about your own disability, but other disabilities too, because accessibility isn't just about one disability, it's about all of them, which the four major ones are sight-related disabilities, hearing-related disabilities, cognitive-related disabilities, and motor-related disabilities as well.
I'm shaking my head yes, and I totally agree.
Great.
I'm not being very accessible there, but okay.
Excellent. Well, we have a couple minutes left, so I just want to wrap up. First, thank you to all of the panelists today. It was great to hear everything that you had to say. Amazing insights. I think you brought a lot of value to our attendees. And thank you very much. We also want to send out a special thank you to WeCo again for making this panel possible. Thank you so much to WeCo for sponsoring. And a few resources that will be helpful following the panel discussion here. First is Disability Employment Connection, a group available on LinkedIn. We'll put this link in the chat, as well as review applicant tips, which can be found on the WeCo website, as well as sending an email to admin@theweco.com. So that does conclude our presentation today. I'm going to work on getting those couple links posted in the chat here in a moment. Are there any last questions that we maybe want answered? I'll give a couple minutes to see if anyone has anything else before we sign off. Thank you guys for all of your insights today. It was great to hear. I see Kelly is putting these in. Thank you so much, Kelly, for putting that stuff in the chat. Well, with that, I think that ends our presentation. We could go ahead and stop